Welcome to Manga Machinations! This is episode number 492, and this week we're doing a one-shot on Onward Towards Our Noble Deaths. I'm Dakazu, and with me is Fox8.
Hello, everybody.
Morgana Santilli.
Hi there.
And Seamus2389.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our manga podcast. We are essentially a book club for manga. We are recording live on our YouTube, youtube.com/mangamactv. We're starting a little late. Sorry about that, but we are now on board and everything is ready to go. Darfox is on cam with his nice Mob Psycho 100 shirt.
That's how I show off shirts. I just shrug my shoulders.
Let's see. Let's get right into things because we're starting a little late. Darfox, do you have the new coffee page thing ready?
The reason why I switched so early over the camera is because I had to do it live. Because I forgot to do it yesterday. But yes, I'm going to hit the button.
Okay. Yes. If you want to support Manga Machinations financially, you can buy us a coffee. Head over to ko-fi.com/mangamac. And you can buy us a coffee. Darfox finally updated the splash page. Thank you. So yeah. We're waiting. Our current goal is to fund the Land of the Lustrous retrospective. And on the news, it was announced that that manga is finally ending. Next chapter is going to be the final chapter. So hopefully we will have our funding in time for that final volume release, and then we can do a retrospective on Land of the Lustrous. But yeah, you can help fund Psycho Selections of Berserk like Philip did, or our upcoming Oku the Inner Chambers retrospective like Magamachu, Vicky Dalton, and Lulu did. But yeah, big thank you to all our supporters, Deluid, Mia, Wyatt, Dr. Meltface, Poor Mexican 72, Liquidus002, Xteen, and Jen. Thank you for supporting our podcast. Okay, we can take that down, Dar. We are running behind, so I'm skipping email again this week. We're going right into some What You Been Reading. Let's start with Morgana. Morgana, did you read anything this past week?
No, but I do have something to talk about.
I love these. Let's go.
X-Men 97 came out this week.
Oh, you watched it?
I watched it, yeah.
Nice.
Have any of you watched it yet?
No, but I was surprised that it got really good reviews because, or I've heard very positive impressions from people that I trust. Because I heard that the guy got fired who made the show, and
Yeah, apparently.
I assumed it was just a shit show behind the scenes, and I kind of just assumed it was crap. But I'm happy to hear that people are enjoying it.
Yeah, it slaps.
Nice.
Wait,
nice,
the
nice.
guy got fired?
Yeah, the showrunner got fired, and I think he wrote the first 2 episodes, which are the 2 that are out right now. They come out every Wednesday. But they were great. They were really good. I, as a kid, and I mean kindergarten, was super into the X-Men cartoon. It was also something when I was a teenager or college age, anytime I was sick, I would just go on YouTube and watch old episodes, in 3 parts on YouTube.
Hell yeah.
So my husband turns it on, Wednesday night. Is this is what we're doing. We're watching X-Men, and we were both like, holy shit, they understood exactly. They understood the assignment, right? They read the brief, they figured it out. The opening song is the exact opening song from the original 90s X-Men cartoon. I believe the idea is that it picks up where the cartoon left off, because I think it ran from, I think my husband was saying 92 or 93 to 96, September 96. So this picks up where the 90s cartoon ended, basically.
Which I didn't know that how it ended. I guess I didn't watch the show to its completion.
Me neither.
But apparently, that original series ended with a Professor X getting like assassinated,
Yep, and that's where it picks up.
which is interesting ending for a show ostensibly made for kids. But
Right.
that cartoon was always like that back in the day. It was always just X-Men in general deals with uh topics that could be heavy.
Yeah, and like with this one,
Hold everybody.
sorry, I have a toddler. With this one, so that happens. Professor X has been assassinated. They kind of try to figure out how to deal with all these problems, whatever. At the end of the first episode, I mean, spoilers, I guess, Magneto shows up and is like, Charles willed the school to me. So you're my X-Men now, basically.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. And Magneto's pretty great. He's a pretty interesting character. Storm looks amazing. They gave Storm her mohawk, even though she didn't have the mohawk in the
Nice.
cartoon. Yeah. And they're taking, as we're watching it, and I never read a lot of the X-Men comics. My husband actually read a ton of them. This is the one. He's got the X-Men knowledge in this family. So I turned to him and I go, "Hang on a second, that happened in the comics, right?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, that did." And so he's like, my fact checker. So they're doing a bunch of things in the cartoon that happened in the comics, and that's pretty exciting. And I know Marvel's doing some tie-in comics too, I think, right now. I know when I started at Comicopia, there was like an X-Men 94 comic, and it kind of sucked. Like, I didn't really like it. I don't know, maybe I would have liked it if it had the opening theme song when you open the cover or something.
Does
'cause
this have the
yes, it is exactly the same, and in fact, the opening animation is almost exactly like the frames are the same. They've changed it a little bit because some of the characters are a little different. But yeah, it's the same exact. It's almost the same exact opening.
Nice.
And the animation is all 2D, all traditionally rendered. It's pretty amazing. I've been kind of bored to tears of Marvel bullshit stuff coming out all the time, and I'm like, okay, they figured it out. They got me. I am definitely an X-Men kid, or was, So yeah, that was my big exciting thing this week. Also, yesterday for movie night, we watched Nausicaa with the kids, and I like Nausicaa better now that I've read the manga. I've only seen the movie. I think this was only the second time I've seen the movie, and I remember watching it and not loving it. And this time around, I was like, okay, I appreciate this more than I did. I have a little bit of context. Yeah, it was a little bit of a rough sell on the 4-year-old. She was good for like the first like 2/3 of it, and then she started to get a little bit bored. It's a bit of a ponderous one.
Yeah.
I don't think Sev is gonna understand like the implications of like luring the Omu because of a fucking war between kingdoms.
No, but you know what? She likes, I mean, she recognizes Studio Ghibli stuff. She, she keeps asking every time I ask her like what kind of movie she wants to watch. She's like, "Oh, I don't know." I'll say like, "Oh, do you want to watch like a funny movie or like a sad, a happy movie, whatever." She said she always wants a sad and a scary movie. 100% of the time she wants a sad and a scary movie. And I'm like, "All right, well, we can only show you Jurassic Park so many times." So we did Nausicaa this time.
Morgana, the answer is I can only watch Jurassic Park so many times.
Also true. Although I think I could watch Jurassic Park quite a few times. It's pretty good. Hard to go wrong with with dinosaurs. But yeah, so we did Nausicaa. It was enjoyable. I appreciate it more. It is such an 80s fantasy story. Like, it didn't really occur to me, and I guess maybe part of it is like the music and stuff, watching it now, but like I was like, man, I didn't realize how much this was like kind of a product of its time.
The soundtrack for that movie is amazing.
It's very good. Oh, it's very good, but it's definitely like I'm sitting here like this reminds me of like The Dark Crystal and The Neverending Story and like other things that were, big fantasy films of the same time period, even though this was, Japanese. So I'm sure different in a lot of ways and pulling from a lot of different influences, but also there's something about it that was very, I don't know, in its time.
I think when we didn't we watch the movie to tie in with like the volume of that retrospective, Dar?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So it's not like we finished the whole series and then we went back to the movie. We actually watched it in the middle of it. Maybe we shouldn't have done that.
Remember the manga going on, and at a certain point, I'm like, wasn't this about the Omu?
Right, yeah.
And
It
then
was,
the manga really isn't about the Omu. It just kind of leaves them behind at a certain point.
yeah, I mean it's that very, heady fantasy politics kind of thing. And
Hey, Seamus, love that.
it's gorgeous. I mean it's a beautiful manga. I love manga too. Which is why the movie is kind of like, kind of I mean, I watched Nausicaa as an adult long after I'd seen a lot of other Ghibli films. And I was like, okay, this is like a less good Princess Mononoke, kind of, is how I felt about it. Again, I think in retrospect, I can appreciate it more, but I think Princess Mononoke nails it. I was also saying that, there's a lot of people talk about, oh, Miyazaki loves these plucky female heroines. They're always so great in this and that. And I'm like, we don't talk enough about the girl boss bitches he's got in all these movies.
Yeah.
There's like the princess in this one. There's I can't remember her name in Princess Mononoke.
Lady Eboshi.
Eboshi, that's right. Yes. Yeah. There's even like, I mean, even in like Laputa, she's the old lady, but she's kind of like a girl boss, like the pirate with all her like sons, her like 50 sons. He's got a type, Miyazaki. He's got a few types.
Yeah, he does it really well because they're kind of the villains, but also like there's more to them. Yeah, they're really good characters.
They are fully realized people. They are people who are doing bad or inadvisable things for very understandable reasons, right? Like Magneto. Just to tie it back to X-Men. I'm a pretty big fan of Magneto and how complex he is as a character. I'm kind of like that he's in this X-Men 97. It's really good. I mean, if you have any interest in X-Men at all, I definitely recommend it. Nausicaa's also good. If you have any interest at all, I recommend you read the manga.
Oh yeah, manga's amazing. It's only in print, but it's fucking worth reading.
Yeah, you can get it in single volumes. I think there are 12 of them or something. They're pretty small. It's pretty skinny, but large, kind of larger format than a regular manga. Or you can drop, I think, like $50 or $60 and buy the hardcover box set with 2 giant volumes, which is what I have. I think it's well worth the price. It's you get 2 books. First of all, they're beautiful hardcovers. It comes with a poster.
They did it in 2 books?
Yep.
Holy shit.
2 big books. They are a little cumbersome.
Worthy of being murder weapons.
Yes. Yeah, if somebody ever invades my home, I can knock them out with either that or the Akira box set, which is 6 of those kind of hardcovers, plus an art book.
With the Akira box, you might as well just pick up a log and just swing
Yeah.
the log.
I've got a few boxes. I could do some damage, actually. I've got the Princess Jellyfish box set, which is paperbacks, but there are quite a few of them. I like a good box set.
Very nice, Morgana. Anything else?
No, I read the next volume of Bloody Sweet, which is one of Yen's Korean titles that we're publishing, not through Eyes Press, through Yen Press. It's the vampire romance one, or a vampire romance one, and it's great. It continues to be very much my shit. So, Bloody Sweet, if you like vampires, if you like weird girls and sexy vampire nonsense, you should read Bloody Sweet. The end.
Very nice. Okay, let's move along. Seamus, you read anything this week?
No, but I did see the End of Evangelion movie because it was in cinemas there.
You
Nice.
went.
Yes, I did.
How was that experience? How was the theater experience too?
I went to, what was it, like an AMC theater? I was gonna say, yeah, that was nicer than like maybe pretty much every theater I've ever been in Ireland. Or at least like the seats are like bigger. They're like actual like seats, not
Yeah,
like
the made for
Giant
big people.
recliners.
they're not like, I don't know, like to me, like a cinema seat is like, you know, the thing you like flip up.
So, Seamus, historically, that's also what theater seats were like in America. These giant recliners with like, you know, like red, was it like a red plush, you know, whatever. Those are relatively new. I would say in the last, what, maybe decade?
Yeah. Well, I think they've trended up in the last like 5 years, where like most theaters are trying to get them in now. But yeah, it is a really recent thing.
I think they're trying to lure people back into the cinema.
Yeah. If you go on to websites to buy tickets, usually that's one of the things it lists if it's reclining seats or stadium seating. Stadium seating is like the one that you're talking about, Seamus, where
Yes,
the
that's
flip
yeah.
up. You still like if you go into enough movie theaters around you, you probably still find some of those. But you went to a nice one.
There's like, because it was on in a theater closer to me, but it was sold out, and that one is like an older theater, and it does have those kind of ones.
So, Seamus, did you experience the existential dread when
No.
they showed that scene with the audience goers, and then they showed it again with the empty seats, where you're looking upon
No.
yourself, but empty?
Because like I watched that movie probably back in like 2008
Yeah.
after I watched the TV show. So like my only like ideas of it are from like watching a few AMVs in the last few years. There's like two particular AMVs of it I like. So I just kind of went in, like, I kind of remembered like kind of how it went, the overall story. But yeah, the live action stuff, actually rewatching, I was like, that was actually like pretty like well done. It was like a pretty cool switch up. But I kind of wanted to go back and like watch the TV show in those last few episodes, because I guess I didn't realize it's actually like you go in and it's like episode 25, and halfway through they do the credits for episode 25, almost like an intermission, and it's like episode 26, so it's like a redo of the last two episodes.
Yes.
Yes, it's supposed to be like a big budget reimagining of the last two episodes, or a remake, because they famously ran out of budget, and Ano probably had like a mental breakdown. Like, it was a shit show behind the scenes. So they had that very abstract, existential kind of like Shinji,
Characters talking to each
yeah,
other.
Shinji
in
floating
his
around in
brain.
space, yeah, and people were, it's just almost like a radio play with some visual aid. Basically, the last two episodes. So the movie you watched was supposed to be kind of like what actually happened, like animated tradition, like in traditional film. But I think a lot of people feel like that's not exactly accurate, because the ending for the anime was pretty like uplifting, and a kind of like an affirming ending, and the ending you saw in the film, or rewatching the film, it's like it's kind of like a dour ending. I don't know if you'd agree.
I think it's a dour ending in the sense that everyone's been turned into goop and the world is fucked. But I don't know, like Shinji, like, I don't know, got over it. Was like, oh, I actually don't want to kill myself. Other people are okay. That whole bit, I was just like, oh yes, this is me being like, if I was whatever Shinji's age at the time, maybe I'd like this. Just like, the less he's on screen, I was like, maybe he should just kill himself. And that way, you know, we don't have to be hearing him talk. It was like his stuff, I was just like, this is all right, but I don't really care. Like, to me, it was like everything else, like all the like the kind of, I don't know, what would you call, like almost like the horror element of it, like the transformations that Rey does, and like all the Evas with all the eyes and stuff, like all that stuff was really good. Or like when she turned people into water or into the goop, like the way they were like transformed. That was all like the good stuff. And then the bit where the army attack and they're just like brutally murdering everyone. And it's like shot in a way where it's like you see someone like down the corridor, almost like it's like a documentary, and you just like see them put their hands up, and then like boom, they're shot in the head, and they like fall down, and someone comes along and just shoots them twice in the head again.
Yep. It is one of the most horrific films I have seen. Just like the I don't know, like just the vividness of the imagery and how well put together those destruction and kind of apocalypse scenes are. Like I really do think it's like a really well put together, um, kind of like a horror movie sometimes.
But then they start talking about whatever the Chamber of Gulf and the Fourth Humanity. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about any of this. And then it's like just Shinji being like sad, and I'm just like, maybe if I'd watched the TV show again, I maybe have a bit more. But I was just like, I don't care. Oh, let's just see two. I didn't. I think I'd totally forgotten. Like I knew he had the whole wanking scene. I didn't realize it's like the very opening of the movie.
Yes.
Yep.
Did the audience cheer during that scene?
No.
What was the audience like during that movie? I'm curious.
I don't know. There wasn't that many people there. Like it was. I don't know how big the theater was, but it was maybe like 25% full, or not.
Okay.
Maybe not even that. Like.
Am I the only person who's seen like the remake movies?
No, I saw them.
You saw all four?
That's all for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Dar, I feel like the end of Evangelion movie, which Seamus saw, is very dour. But if you consider like the four movies that came afterwards, it's not too bad.
Well, the final film ends it in a way that's pretty positive.
Yeah,
Also,
and I feel
also very meta. It's just it really goes up his own ass around, kind of.
yeah.
But it felt like a nice send off to the franchise, and also felt like I don't know, like making peace with Evangelion. Like, okay, I can finally lay this down to rest. I have nothing to do with this anymore.
Mhm.
Which like I liked. I like that part about it.
So I'm saying like if you look at the movies that come after the end of Evangelion, then at the end of Evangelion like is like maybe it's in the middle of the story.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. We're not going to watch the movies for this podcast, everybody.
Yeah, I'd bounce. Sorry. I ain't doing that.
I'm not going to put Morgana through that, and I saw those four new movies and I enjoyed them for what they were. But I wasn't like frothing at the mouth about like, oh man, dude, do you see Shinji? He's so sad. I love it. I don't give a shit. It's fine.
I think Evangelion as a franchise is like has some of the strongest individual scenes that I can think of in anime that just like really stay with me. I'm talking about like everything. I'm talking about the show, the end of Evangelion, the remake films, just individual moments and scenes that are just like so well put together from just from a filmmaking perspective of framing the characters and editing the scene and stuff like that. Which is funny because a lot of it is like done because of like uh monetary restraints and stuff like that. There's famous scenes in Evangelion that just drag on forever because they didn't have that much frames to draw. Um, but yeah, like there's a lot of it's like I like the details of Evangelion, and then the big broad view of it is very muddled and like kind of hard for me to just recommend or say that's like a great anime, that's like a great movie. But damn, that scene when they're like using all the electricity from Tokyo to shoot that huge rifle at the crazy diamond angel, and he fucking misses, and then they have one more shot like that. That's like some good fucking shit. That's like well done.
Very nice, Seamus. Do you have anything else to say about seeing the end of Evangelion?
I was just to say, Not that I can think of really. All I could think of was I prefer the Utena movie to this one, I think. But I also think I've mentioned for Utena in general to Evangelion.
Okay.
Nobody in the theater was singing "Tumbling Down" like if it was Jericho's opening song.
No.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right, Dar.
very
What about
iconic.
you?
I don't have anything except for something completely random, um, and not manga related at all. But I'm still going to talk about it because it'll probably be funny or entertaining. Um, After watching Dune Part Two, I fell back in the hole of watching YouTube videos about like Dune, and especially like the further Dune books, like Children of Dune, and all the crazy shit that happens that they probably will never make movies about. And I came across a YouTuber that both Dagazu and I have watched in the past, called Quinn's Idea. So this is basically a shout out to a YouTuber that we both enjoyed. Quinn's Idea is just he's an avid sci-fi reader. And I think he also reads like horror and stuff, but he's a huge like Dune fanatic, and he just has tons of like Dune lore videos. So I was watching a lot of his videos. He has a good voice, and he's good. He does a good job of like recapping books and talking about like their ideas and stuff. Um, and I saw like a bunch of other videos on there, and I saw he had some about the three body problem. Morgan, I don't know if you've heard or read this book.
I have not read it, but I have heard of it. Yes.
Yeah, so it's a pretty famous Chinese science fiction novel that's been translated. There's three of them. It's the Three Body Problem, the Dark Forest, and Death's End, I think.
That's in, yeah. It's
Yeah.
also not called the Three Body Volume. It's in Remembrance of Earth's Past. It's just everyone calls it after the title of the first book.
Yeah, it's kind of how people call Game of Thrones off of the TV show being called Game of Thrones, even though technically the book series is Song of Fire and Ice or whatever. It's just whatever catches on, I guess. I went to like this rabbit hole of watching a bunch of Quinn's Ideas videos about the three body problem, and like reading some Wikipedia, and like my takeaway of this. And Seamus, I talked to Seamus briefly before the podcast, and he has read the book, so we have somebody
Of
with
course, he's read the books.
we have somebody with some amount of authoritative experience with this, and not just us. Not just gonna be me talking about YouTube.
Not
video.
just you watching a YouTube video.
Yeah.
I don't know, Dakazu, isn't that our used to talk about movies in the old podcast you were saying there?
I don't know what you're talking about. There's certain no audio evidence of me saying such things.
Yeah. So, it's a very like pessimistic like science fiction outlook, and it's a very like it's not a horror book. It's science fiction, but it definitely has a lot of like existential dread and huge content warning if that kind of like sets you off for the idea of um humanity at risk on a cosmic scale, or just like literally like billions of humans dying off and stuff like that. There's a lot of that stuff in this book series, but essentially it's about an alien species discovering Earth and making their way to Earth to kind of like either kill or subjugate humans and take over the Earth because they want the Earth. So it's going to take like 400 years for them to get here, and humans know they're coming. So eventually, this triggers like mass, mass riots, and like humans almost destroy themselves. And part of like the part of the pessimism. I'm jumping ahead in the story, so there's going to be spoilers in what I'm talking about. Um, Part of the pessimism is that like um to combat the aliens, humans start putting all of their like resources in the space force, which basically creates more scarcity on Earth, and it super accelerates like global warming, and just creates like basically just dooms so like a bunch of humans. And it's like this idea of humans never standing a chance. Like the humans really do not stand a chance against I think they call it Trisolarans or something like that, the alien race. And partly because they were sabotaged by the Trisolarans, because the Trisolarian supercomputers are on Earth and they're spying on Earth in real time. In real time, they know everything the Earthlings are doing, and they are even like just like sabotaging human advancement in certain ways. So like there's literally like zero chance the humans have against these people, which is already like like kind of like a dreadful, scary thought. But like the part that really got me was something that the second book really gets into, which was um the dark forest idea that the universe is a dark forest filled with hunters stalking each other. So statistically, with how many stars and planets there are in the universe, there should be like plentiful life in the universe, but the universe seems empty and like dead. And in this fiction, the whole explanation for that is that any advanced species that lets themselves be known is immediately wiped out by another species because the universe is extremely hostile. So everybody is basically just hiding. Um, so everybody is a stalking hunter, and the moment somebody makes a noise, they just get taken out by the other hunters in the bush. Which is, I'm like a Star Trek baby, right? And that's like the exact opposite of like the whole like Star Trek, like, hey, we have people out there we gotta meet, and yeah, we're gonna have some friction, we're gonna make some enemies, but most of all, we're gonna make friends, and there's gonna be nice advancements, and it's kind of kumbaya, right? So
Space diplomacy.
yeah, so like, um, it's not even the idea of like we're gonna go to war with people out there. It's more like the idea of like there is no chance for any dialogue. It's like if they know you're there, they're gonna send something to blow up your sun, and you're gone. And the only reason that the Trisolarans are going towards Earth in the first book is because they live in a really hostile system with three suns that makes their planet really fucked up. And they're like, "Whoa, Earth is pretty chill, so let's just take over Earth and just Earth will be great for us." Because otherwise they would have just figured out a way to just remotely kill us. Because any like advance or any advancing civilization is not worth the grief, because you never know how fast they can like build up technology and actually be a threat. So it's just like this baby out with the bathwater mentality of like intelligence, they're gone. And like the book is Chinese, and I don't want to say anything out of turn um that might be racist, but there's a couple ideas in it that just seem like very Chinese and kind of regressive, and I hate to just attribute like any regressive ideas to a whole freaking culture.
I'm gonna interrupt you for just
Yeah.
1 second. The author, Cixin Liu,
Yeah.
he has been like a vocal genocide apologist for what China is doing to the indigenous people of like northern China. So
Oh,
if things seem regressive, they might be. I'm just saying he's a complicated guy. There's a lot of drama over the Hugos being held in China this past year. So he's very popular right now. His books are getting a lot of press, but he's a complicated person.
He might be an asshole.
Yeah, he might be.
I'm gonna spoil you something. I'm not even sure in which book this comes in. Seamus wants to correct me with anything. He can just step in and correct me. But this is full spoiler. So anybody, this has a Netflix adaptation that's pretty recent. So if you're watching that and you're interested, you're gonna want to skip over this because I'm talking about shit that's way later on. So if they keep making this, this might be season 4 or 5 of the series. I don't freaking know. I don't know. But like, just I need to like communicate this. It's like acid out of my brain. I need to just pour it out. But like, okay, I find this book and the story is really interesting. Like really interesting, heady sci-fi ideas. It's interesting at least to hear about it in a YouTube video. I don't know how dry it would be if I'm reading it. But basically, the way the humans get a temporary victory on the Trisolarans is that one of the guys tasked with coming up with strategies, because the Trisolarans are spying constantly. Any kind of meetings with the UN and people in power is immediately spied upon, and they know what we're up to. So they come up with the wall facer program, which is they select individuals and they give them like infinite resources and infinite power, and they just come up with all the ideas in their head to counteract them, because the translators can't read people's heads, and because they don't understand humans, they can't really read humans facial, like it's not like they could read somebody like a detective. They're just collecting data. So one of the wall facers comes up with an idea. He realizes he discovers the whole like dark forest situation of the universe, and he comes up with an ultimate deterrence plan where it says, back off your attack, or I'm going to reveal to the whole universe where Earth is and where your homeland is, and mutually destroying both of us. And it works. They're like, well, the translators are way more advanced than humans, but they're not the most advanced things in the universe. They will be instantly wiped out if others knew that they existed. So they instantly it works. It instantly called off, and there's like simulations to try and figure out how serious this guy is, and they figure out that like there's like a 95 to 98 percentile chance that he will actually push the button and reveal the location, and they don't want to take that risk. So he becomes the humanity's first sword bearer. Basically, he's just holding the button to click the button in case anything the translators try and pull. When he gets old enough, he passes on the button, or they basically elect a new sword bearer. And this is the part that I really hope that Seamus corrects me, because I'm already laughing. I could barely get it out. Okay, they pass the person who gets selected to be the next sword bearer once the original guy gets too old, is a woman, and the woman is very she's involved in sciences, so like she's very capable, she's very smart, but deep down inside she knew that she could never push the button. She just thought that it was the symbol, the deterrence, but the translators knew that she didn't have it in her. And there's stuff about the book about how she's not a warrior, she's a woman, and she can't have like, basically the original guy was living his life 24/7, being like, fucker, do something, I'm fucking dare you, do something, I'll push the button, and she's like, I can't do that. I need to actually live a fulfilling life. And the translators knew this about her. So the moment the woman takes over the job, fucking humanity gets wiped out, and she doesn't push the button.
Bro.
And it's kind of comical. Like when I was reading this, it's like, is this guy like actually like a child? Like, is this what is his idea of like? I mean, like the idea of deterrence. There's plenty of philosophical like writing about deterrence back and forth or whatever, and like one of my favorite video games ever, Metal Gear Peace Walker, it comes back to Metal Gear always. Also plays with the idea of like, in the moment where you have to push the button to mutually destroy each other, will somebody's humanity win out and say, actually, I'll take the hit, because if I push the button, then everybody's dead. But if I don't push this button, then at least some of humanity survives. There's been philosophical talkings about that. But at least the way the story was portrayed to me on YouTube, which I admit isn't an accurate full view of the story, it seemed like very sexist and simplified.
Yeah, it's fairly sexist. Like, there's a whole thing, I can't remember which book, but like, someone wakes up in a future society and it's like they're all underground now, and it's like, oh, the men are all of like long hair and they look like women. And it's very much like, do we need to bring these old people back from like men were men before they were turned soft? Because soft times create soft men. The hard times, then you need hard men. It's very, and in general, it's like as I read those books a few years after they came out, and it was kind of this period, I don't know, when was it, nearly like 5 to 10 years ago, when like stuff like this and other Chinese stuff started getting translated into English. Like that thing in China is like the Worldcon, and like I remember going to there was one in Dublin, like I don't know how many years ago, and there was like they do like an academic track every year, and they had a whole academic track on Chinese science fiction, or like the one before in Finland, like 2 years beforehand. I think the crowd who ran the one in Chengdu, like almost pitching it, because I went to like one thing about it and I was like, is this like an ad for the city? Like, what the fuck are they doing? But then I only realized later, oh yeah, because like the way Worldcon works is like people at is like the two preceding ones. Like it's basically voted by members of like
Mhm.
older ones for like where the next one goes. So it's like, oh, clearly they're like starting off their campaign to get it to go there. Like because as I'm in Finland, I think I like it's like yeah, I'll vote for Dublin. Go on, like I won't have to travel next time. But yeah, it was funny because there's a guy on YouTube, like Bookpill is the name of the account, and he did this whole thing where he's like, "Oh, I'm going to read 100 sci-fi books," and I think he did an episode recently on Three Body Problem, and he was like, "I was like, oh yeah, those books are like not good. There's no way I could read them now. I'd be like, get 20 pages and it'd be like, God, these are woeful. 'Cause they're like they're like very dry and just not well written or not well translated, and like they're very like a lot of the stuff is like, I think he kind of started off in the 80s, and like a lot of the stuff is like, oh, this is like like science fiction was written like 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It's like very old fashioned that way. Which I think is maybe also part of the reason why it was like so popular when it came out in English. It's like very like a throwback thing. But yeah, it's very sexist.
Yeah, the stories, from what I can gather, like it's not like a very character oriented story. It's mostly about like the science fiction ideas and the stuff going on, and that's like the interesting part. Um, but and it kind of makes sense because the story takes place over hundreds of years, so you usually can't follow the same characters. But some characters go into like cryogenic sleep and they wake up in different eras. So some characters do stick around, but overall, it's just complete turnover with the characters constantly throughout the books. So it's not like a story where you can really, you know, you know, uh, pin your emotions on a character and follow one character or something like that. It's more just science fiction ideas, which again, I do enjoy, I do like, but there is, ironically, I feel like the human component of this author's creative process is what's at fault. He can't take himself out of creating the science fiction, and the self that he puts in there might be fucking toxic. you know.
I actually I will say there is a bit. So there's a in the first book, it kind of jumps around in time because one of the main characters is a woman who her parents were imprisoned or killed during the Cultural Revolution,
Yeah.
and I think she deliberately like reveals the position of Earth. She's like, ah, fuck it, let's just destroy us.
Yes.
So there is actually one woman in there who's like, yeah, fuck it, I'm pushing the button, like fuck them. They fucked me and my family. I'm fucking humanity. But yeah, yeah, the second or third book when they go to that future society, it's like, oh, this is like a Robert Heinlein book. Not in a good way. That's not a good thing. If compared to Robert Heinlein, they're never good. If someone says like Robert Heinlein, please just be like, you don't want to talk to him.
Yeah. The first book, yeah, from what I understand, is like a non-linear narrative, but yeah, like the whole premise is that like uh the yeah the woman like understands that she reveals Earth, it's gonna be destruction for humanity. She's just, yeah, the fuck, let's do it. And I think they start like a anti-human like group that's like
Yes.
helping the Tricerans like behind the scenes.
Yep.
But but basically double agents, so which is the whole thing. And there's also just like a whole recruitment tool where they sell like a VR game. So it's also like what's that movie about the guy playing the video game and he gets high enough score, he goes up to space. I forget what it's called. But
The Last Starfighter.
the last star. It's also like the last Starfighter, but like recruitment for like the turncoats, which is really funny to me. But yeah, I really enjoyed hearing about it. It's a really interesting sci-fi world, but it's you come across those moments where you're like, there's kind of culture context to this that like I'm definitely not privy to, but I wonder, and I've learned during this conversation things that I kind of assumed about the author.
Yeah, like to me, that whole thing with your one and the whole Cultural Revolution to me was the most interesting part of it. Because like I think I said that in one of the comments of that book, but it's like it's not worth reading from a point of view of, oh, this is interesting like fiction to read in terms of it's well written and interesting characters. It's more just like because like the books are very popular in China as well. So it's more just like, oh, here's an example of a work of fiction that was like very popular in China, and you read it that way. Like that's like I don't know that they were vaguely interesting at the time. I wouldn't even bother rereading them now.
So, in my opinion, if you have any interest in what I just talked about, go check out Quinn's Ideas YouTube channel. Uh, pretty fun recaps. He has a really good voice and really good at enthusiastically explaining ideas and themes and stuff like that. But yeah, I had very little interest in reading the books, and now I have less after this conversation. I don't know, Douglas, you've been pretty quiet. I wondered about you because sometimes you just don't want to read about like stuff about existential dread and stuff like that. You just don't want to deal with it.
Well, I was listening to your conversation because I knew nothing about this book.
Yeah.
And the entire like concept about like the dark forest and how like alien race is actually just out to fucking murder each other. Actually, it makes more sense to me than like your Star Trek world.
Yeah.
So I thought that part was kind of interesting. But then you mentioned the entire like the woman not being able to push the button. I was just like rolling my eyes so hard. That seems so fucking fucked.
It's a very dismal view of the universe. Depressing.
You could argue it's a realistic view, but also not really.
Well, hold on now, Dar. It's no more realistic than when people throw out this stuff. It's like the Fermi podcast. You're just pulling numbers out of your ass here, people. Like we have no idea what the fuck's out there. Like it's all just speculation.
I also always have the problem when we're talking about like life on other planets or life out, beyond our own planet. Our definition of life is based on life on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
So I always wonder, like, are we only using our own yardstick here? Like, what if life looks different somewhere else?
I would say if you want to read like what I think is a more interesting and well written and shorter science fiction book with an interesting idea, there's one actually called The Blind Side on just that, Morgana. It's like these people go out to this planet and they encounter this thing and they're like, is it alive? We're not sure. Is it intelligent? We're not sure. And they're like trying to like figure it out. And there's vampires, because it turns out that vampires existed back like millions of years ago. But it turns out vampires can't, if they see straight lines, if they see like intersecting straight lines or at a 90-degree angle, it'll like fuck them up.
Hence the cross.
Exactly, because they don't occur in nature. Actually, weirdly enough, and then I was like, and of course, and then you realize there's the whole thing about chickens. If you like hold them down and have them like stare at a straight line, they just are nearly like hypnotized by it.
This sounds great. You said it's called The Blind Side?
The Blind Side by Peter Watts. I would say if you want to read like a hard science fiction of ideas, like that one's probably more. Three Body Problems, go on to the Wikipedia page and be like, all right, Dark Forest Grant. There's basically explained it there. Like there's a few ideas, but I don't know. It's like one of those things where like, and there's a lot of science fiction novels I think like this, and even a lot of non-fiction books where it's like, this is maybe worth like a 5 pages of reading, or maybe like a couple paragraphs.
It's
not
like
416 pages of a novel.
Not like hundreds of pages. There's a lot of like, I don't know, what would you call them, like popular science fiction, or I don't know, like, I'm trying to think, what's a good example? There's some book I read recently there about something about like negotiation or something. Someone mentioned it, and I picked it up from the library, and I was like, there's like maybe 50 pages worth of actual material here, but like your deal with the publisher was like, we need 300 pages, so you threw in like 250 pages of antidotes, and not antidotes. What's the word? What's the thing where you say it's like, oh, an example story?
Anecdote,
yes. That's a Three Body Problem. It's like, okay, lads, yeah, of course, yeah. These are all soft people because the men go around with long hair and look like women. Yeah, no wonder humanity is fucked. Yeah, you're dead right.
It's very like that's some boomer shit. World wouldn't be so fucked if we didn't all have long hair and tattoos.
He is. He's 60 now. But see, the other thing there's like a whole. Yeah, there was all like I said, like when this stuff started coming out like 7 or 8 years ago, like there was like a couple of collections released, and you would like certain authors, like Chinese authors, they were kind of like writing articles that got translated to English or published originally in English, like, talking about the context of science fiction. And like the one thing was, for a lot of them, like I think Sishin is one of them, and like people of his generation, there was this idea of like science fiction should almost be like what's the word I'm looking for? Like kind of like a way of influencing society and kind of like an educational tool. So it's not like writing it for the sake of, entertainment. It should serve like a moral and educational purpose. It kind of ties back into, there's like an old Chinese writer from the early 1900s who, like, he kind of very much talked about science fiction in that way. And Mao was a big fan of that guy. So I think that kind of became an influence in kind of, because a lot of session stuff, like I read short stories and all, it's just him throwing out interesting ideas, but like the writing, even in translation, isn't great, and the characters are really non-existent.
That is interesting because I do think there's a lot of science fiction that does that, right? That imparts ideas or philosophies, or I mean, I don't know about like tries to educate, but definitely tries to propose ideas. But I think the most successful ones, that's not their sole function or their like entire purpose. Like there's definitely the entertainment value is also equally important. If you aren't entertaining the people ingesting your ideas, they're not going to want to, it's not going to be enjoyable to take your ideas into consideration. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I will say, like, these books sold like incredibly well in China and also very
yeah.
well in English. I just think they're terrible. Your man Matt and Book Bill, like, is a very good takedown of, like, from a writing point of view. It's like, what the fuck is this like? 'Cause that was true of a lot of those science fiction stories back then. It was like, they were like, as a short story, yeah, these people have an idea, and like, short story, you've only got so many words, so you can't like drag on for ages. And then you read some of the novels, and they're all just like, this is not good. Like, but I was thinking of like, oh, well, I see what happened like in the last whatever 7 or 8 years since I was like, I don't think I'm going to pay too much attention to contemporary science fiction. But there was like another collection put out, and there was a guy, what's his name, Neil Harrison, actually has a good article where he did like a kind of timeline where he kind of breaks down like when different stuff was written in China and when it got translated here, because they don't quite line up, and like kind of what was going on. Oh fuck! There was one novelist that wrote that article about like it is like it's not like an educational tool, but your own where it's like, oh okay, this kind of makes like a lot of the stuff from his generation make more sense now when I read it, and like why I don't really like it.
Well,
Also,
okay.
democracy is a bad idea.
Dar, anything else to say about the three-body problem?
The last thing I wanted to express was that one of the things that stood out to me, hearing like various recaps about the book, is the idea of the book is very hostile towards the idea of reevaluating your enemies. Because the humans, it happens like 2 or 3 times where the humans start to say, you know what, maybe the Trisolarians aren't that bad. They're in a rough spot just like us. Maybe one day, bam, they get betrayed by Trisolarians. It happens like a lot. In the book, like the human sentiment for some reason starts to, and it seems kind of arbitrary. At least the way it was explained in the videos, it seems kind of arbitrary that they start to kind of like maybe gain some sympathy for like the enemy, and then they get like brutally destroyed in 9/11 times 1,000, like tragedy that kills like 1 million humans. And it's like, well, fuck that. That's what you get for thinking outside the box, I guess. Like if they're enemies, fucking kill them no matter what. And I couldn't help but like think that's like part of the brain worms going on with this guy.
So some grade A tribalism right there.
Well, you are leaving out like the very end of the book, very, very end of the last book. It's like, oh Christ, they end up like every remaining foreigner life goes into these micro universes that cuts them off from the main universe. But then like there's a whole thing where it's like, oh, because of that, the universe can't restart itself again. So it's like, hey, everyone in the micro universe, you need to like destroy yourselves in these micro universe, otherwise the universe is fucked. I think like the woman and some other character, they were like, yeah, fuck it, might as well do it. Like, so there's a bit of I don't know, is it like hopeful, but it's like it's not as it's all fucked. Or it's a bit like the end of Evangelion that way, really. It's like the whole thing's fucked, but like there's just like one thing.
I love that we can always tie our conversations back to an earlier conversation.
What a good podcast we are.
Everything is connected.
But I'll actually try, because I was funny, like, only because I think I didn't read Three Kingdoms until after I read these books, and I kind of realized like the whole wall breaker thing is like such a your man. Like I was really thinking like you have what's the guy in Three Kingdoms? Oh, there's a bunch of them, but like there are all these like guys who have plans, but they don't tell anyone the plan, and then they're like, and this is my plan all along. You see, he thought I was like doing mad stuff. It's like no, you see, I had a perfectly good plan. That's basically what he does.
Yeah.
You're telling like this guy with a button is Zhuge Liang.
Yes,
Fucking
exactly.
Kunming Darfox.
I think that in the three body problem, they all think he's doing nothing, so they threaten to like kill his wife and kid. And then he's like, because like all the other guys are, there's whatever other wall breakers are spending all this money and doing mad shit, and he's just like, oh, point the telescope in this direction, fire off this thing, and he like reveals it to be like, no, I actually do have a plan. I actually know what I'm doing here, and mine is the only plan that works.
Yeah, like the aliens style. Like we thought you were just occupying your mind by fiddling around with these things. It's like, okay.
All right, we've been talking about the three body problem for long enough. Let's move along. I will quickly talk about a manga because we have miraculously not talked about any manga up to this point. I
Talked about Nausicaa, kind of.
yeah, we did. We had talked about a lot of adjacent things, so it's fine. I had 2 manga prepared, but I'll just keep it to 1 because of our time restraints. I read a manga that I thought was very interesting, and then I was like, I don't want to read any more of this manga anymore. It's called Fujo no... Bleh. Hold on. I'm screwing up this time. Fujo o nugu hito. Basically translates to someone who cleans remnants of death. It's a manga by Okitabaka. She's a manga artist with a very cute manga art style. She made this manga with the help of Yasuo Amaike. But it's a manga about a fictional man named Masato Yamada, 39. His job is a trauma cleaner. Basically, he cleans up after corpses. So this is in the cases of, an undiscovered body that's passed away for many months. The body is in terrible state. After the police are done with it, somebody has to go in and clean up the area, clean up the apartment, clean up whatever. And this is stories about that cleanup and different examples. I just linked the other hosts to a free sample chapter up on Pixiv.
This is like so my shit.
I wanted to bring this up because I figured Morgana would be super into it.
Yes.
The thing is, Okitabaka is probably most famous for a manga series she did called Owakare Hospital, which is literally like it's similar kind of themed manga where a nurse is working at a hospital, and it's all about every chapter is about a different person who is passing away from old age. It's almost like a hospice situation. I can't read that manga. My anxiety about death makes me like very uncomfortable looking at that manga. However, I was able to read through this first volume of Fujo wo nugu hito. Darfox, you're looking at... Okay, yeah. So this man, he gets a call about a case. He works for a company that does the cleaning. These corpse cleans up. Apparently, a 60-year-old man living alone passed away in his apartment. It's been over a month since they passed away because, they didn't have any family. They only noticed because there was weird liquid seeping out from the side of the wall. But, Darfox, if you see in the upper right corner of the page you presented, he gets grabbed. There's literally, like, the first case opens up with a ghost preventing him from entering and doing cleanup. And the main character has, like, a very strong sense of, like, ghosts and everything like that. Darfox, I would say be very careful about the pages you show, because even in this first chapter, Morgana, you see the guys talking about one of his first cases where he was doing a cleanup, and it was a woman who passed out who had a grand piano in the center of their room. It had been over a month, since their body was like discovered, and apparently, after a month, a corpse, like the scalp, will just separate from the head, and so this person was like, "Oh, there's a wig here," and it's like, it's not a wig. It's the literal hair and scalp of like the person who passed away. And the sensation of the crunch of the skin, the dry dead skin, is a crazy sensation that this person had to deal with. But Morgana, the second chapter talks about how like that's the corpse, the spirit of the ghost of that person followed him home.
Oh no.
And really bad shit happened at his home. They kept hearing rustling and they thought, is there a rat in our house? But one night his wife was going into the kitchen because they heard rustling. And when she entered, there was a bright green flash. And it didn't make any sense why she would see that. And so she was completely freaked out. And they had to get a Buddhist monk to
perform an exorcism.
Basically cleanse the area.
This sounds fascinating. I think I talked about it a while ago. I read a nonfiction book written by a medical examiner, who does autopsies on dead bodies, specifically from in strange circumstances, like potentially murdered or things like that.
Forensics, yeah.
Forensics, yeah. So she actually worked in New York and did a lot of the post 9/11 autopsies, which was, that was a really, really intense segment to read. It was a really, really good and really interesting book. Definitely don't recommend it if you have death anxiety. But I love stuff like this. And there's a nonfiction book out there, also another like memoir autobio thing about trauma cleaning. And it's been on my I've been on the lookout for that one because I'm very curious about it. And one of my favorite, I guess you'd call her an influencer, is Caitlin Doty, who runs the Order of the Good Death. She's a mortician, and she talks a lot about she has written nonfiction books about death and dying and things like that. So yeah, this is extremely my thing. I can understand why it is hard to read, though. People don't like thinking about what happens after they're gone, and I don't blame them.
I have more anxiety about leading up to death and like people about to die like that because it's sad, and so that gives me anxiety. Like hearing about corpse cleanup and what the fucking body does after it's dead is my morbid curiosity, literal morbid curiosity, kind of outweighs my anxiety in this case. One chapter is dedicated to what happens at a hotel. Like a person checked in to slash their wrists and commit suicide in bed. And so the cleaners are called in. They can't go to the space until noon because they have to wait for checkout. And then they're rushing on a time limit before the check-in time of 3 or 4 o'clock, where they replace the blood and the carpet and they have to dress in normal clothes so not to scare all the other guests. It's some wild shit to think they recarpet and do everything and get it done, and then someone's gonna check into that room where someone literally died that day.
Wild.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that reminded me, have you guys ever seen the movie 4 Rooms?
Yes.
Yeah, it's this movie that takes place in 4 different rooms in a hotel.
And it's directed by 4 different people. The last one is Quentin Tarantino. Yes.
And there's a corpse, right, in that one? That's the one.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the weird. That one actually does make me deeply uncomfortable. But Quentin Tarantino movies do that to me. So.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of the point of them. But yeah, it was just you're like dead bodies in a hotel, and my brain went 4 rooms.
I audibly made a sound when I read one of the chapters, which was about things that get left behind sometimes. And there's different cases where, like, they'd be cleaning up a hallway in a place, and the police forensics team did such a shitty job of cleaning that they were cleaning up the hallway, and the guy was like, "What's this round thing?" And it was an eyeball. A literal eyeball fell out of the guy. And then it's a moral question of, like, do we take this back to the police? Do we just throw it out? What the fuck do we do? We don't got time for this. But a guy was cleaning a bathtub. What happened was a 70-year-old woman passed out from heat shock in the tub, and the tub cooked her. So by the time it was discovered, there was nothing but, you know, remnants of bones and, like, hair and stuff in the tub, and the guy's cleaning it out. And then he, like, noticed, oh, there's a glove on the wall, and he goes to, like, pull it off.
Oh God!
It's not a glove. It's the skin off the hand that has fallen off.
Yeah, that medical examiner book I was talking about, she talks about the worst corpse that she ever dealt with, and it was a situation where a worker fell into a steaming sewer, basically. And I don't remember the whole context of it, but essentially he was cooked. And she had to do an autopsy on somebody who was, I mean, steamed alive, and it was, she said it was really terrible, you know, but I was just like, that like triggered my own, like, nightmare.
I should have given a warning.
Yeah.
Before I start, I'll put a warning in the show notes. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm talking about some, like, really dark, morbid stuff. Yeah. It's so I powered through this first volume because I was just so fascinated with all these stories. There was only, like, one story about, like, a sad, you know, death, and, you know, it had more, like, an emotional attachment to it, which I cried at. So after finishing that first one, I was just like, I'm good. This was interesting. I want to talk about it, and then I don't want to read any more volumes, even though there's a bunch more.
I think, I mean, this is cool, but it's fictional, you said, right? So it's
fiction in the sense that it's like the main character here is not a real person, but
the circumstances are,
yeah, like, it's co-written by someone who actually works in trauma cleaning. So I'm sure a lot of these stories are, like, true.
Certainly plausible, anyway.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. Fujou o Nugu Hito by Okita Bakka, and also helped by Yasuo Amaike. Okay, let's wrap up what you've been reading. Let's get ready for our main segment, but before that, we're going to talk about next week. Seamus is leaving for Ireland. He's going to be gone for a couple weeks. We will miss him. So, next week, we are going to do something different. Munben Machinations. There's a Japanese television show called Munben, Naoki Urasawa's Munben, where each episode follows a different manga artist, and they secretly film them drawing manga and, you know, look at their process. And then afterwards, Naoki Urasawa sits down with the manga artist to talk to them about their process and their style and everything. It's a very fascinating, very in-depth look at manga artists and how they create their manga. It's probably, like, the best television show to dive into, like, the actual, like, creation of manga. It's very fascinating, very good. Starfox, you and I have talked about this a lot.
Yep.
Munben is now available legally to watch in English. They have you can go to the NHK World Japan website, and they have episodes up. So, next week, we're going to watch an episode. There's an episode on Wataru Watanabe, the creator of Yomishi Pedal. And you know what? Morgana had a great idea. we're also going to read the first collection of Yomish Pedal by put out by Yen Press. And so we'll watch this Mumbin episode, and we'll talk about the manga. Mumbin Machinations. I'm excited about this.
Yep, should be cool.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I've been meaning to watch more Manben. I think I've mentioned I've seen some of the Junji Ito one, and that was cool. It's a great idea. It's a great idea to like just kind of casually have two mangaka talking to each other about manga for nerds to enjoy.
We may revisit this idea in the future. Maybe we'll do like more episodes of the Mumbin. Maybe we'll read it along with the manga like next week. But yeah, for next week, we're looking at Wataru Watanabe's episode of Munben, and we're going to read that first English collection of Yomish Pedal. Stay tuned for that. Okay, everybody, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it'll be time for our one-shot. Stay tuned. Okay, everybody, we are back. For our main segment, we are talking about Shigeru Mizuki's Onward Towards Our Noble Deaths. It's a manga that he put out in 1973 in Gekiga Gendai magazine, put out by Kodansha. It is published in English by Drawn and Quarterly. And the original... This is first paperback edition, April 2011. I wonder if the hardcover version came out earlier.
I don't know if there was a hardcover version of this. I only ever remember seeing the paperback, but
Okay.
I also started at Kamakopia in 2015, so it's possible to do a hardcover.
Okay. Okay, so our friend Jocelyn Allen was the translator for this. Translation advisor Brian Allen, font design Kevin Huizagen. Did you guys notice that at the end of this book, there's a Shigeru Mizuki like about the author segment, and underneath it is about Zach Davison?
Yes.
What the hell happened?
That is not in mine because I have the physical book. I suspect they just popped in a page for their ebooks that was from one of the newer translations, because Zach Davison does all of the Shigeru
No,
Mizuki
yeah, he
stuff
does
since
the other
this.
stuff, but
Yeah.
Jocelyn did this one, so I was
Right.
like, why is Zach here?
I suspect, because I don't know if that was, because I know Zach Davison's very involved too in getting the books and everything. So I suspect that was something that they like. Maybe that was the page they had, with Shigeru Mizuki's little bio. So they just slapped that in without really thinking that maybe they shouldn't put Zach Davison on there. It's not his.
Okay, let me read the copy on Drawn and Quarterly. A landmark publishing event of one of Japan's most famous cartoonists. Shigeru Mizuki is the preeminent figure of Gekiga manga and one of the most famous working cartoonists in Japan today, a true living legend. Onward Towards Our Noble Deaths is his first book to be translated into English and is a semi-autobiographical account of the desperate final weeks of a Japanese infantry unit at the end of World War II. The soldiers are told that they must go into battle and die for the honor of their country, with certain execution facing them if they return alive. Mizuki was a soldier himself. He was severely injured and lost an arm, and uses his experiences to convey the devastating consequences and moral depravity of the war. I'm not going to read the second paragraph here because it's mostly a biography about Shigeru Mizuki. Okay, so we read this, and I think the first thing I need to talk about is the let's see, Morgana, you have a physical copy of this, so you read that.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Fox, Seamus, and I read the digital edition that we got for Kindle, and this clearly was one of the things, people were not doing fucking manga editions yet or whatever, because you flip the pages left to right. But so like once I started doing that, I was like, oh, is this like a Osamu Tezuka book that, all the pages are flipped? When you start reading the manga, it's very clear that you're supposed to read the pages from right to left, like normal manga. However, they're oriented still left to right, so they're oriented backwards in a 2-page spread. It's fucking maddening. I ended up like reading it like, I couldn't do the 2-page spread on my like Kindle app on my computer. I ended up reading it on my phone 1 page at a time. Luckily, the 2-page spreads are put together very well, and with no error in between them, and they're just presented as a whole thing. So that was nice. But yeah, it's if you read the ebook, you might get confused about this bullshit. Anyway, the manga follows one specific soldier. It follows a group of them. But specifically, you follow one soldier. What was his name? Maruyama?
I believe so. I mean, there's like a thing in the front. Yeah, Maruyama, private second class.
Okay. It's confusing because there's so many characters.
So many. When I was looking at that like dramatis persona at the front that like tells you everybody, I was like, I'm not gonna remember any of these people.
I do appreciate like the layout of the battalion commander and like how like all the companies and how all the ranks work. So I appreciated that. But yeah, it follows them as they get shipped out from Kokopo, New Britain in 1943 over to... Where did they fucking go? God, I read this at the beginning of last week, so like I don't remember details. I'm so bad at this.
The name of the island?
Yeah.
Raubon? Rao?
Rabaul, I think.
Rabaul, yeah.
Okay. Well, they get to Rabaul, and it's interesting in the fact that it follows their daily lives of being on like this island, and they're not really fighting. It's not about like any fighting. They're just like living there, setting up their camps and everything at the beginning.
A lot of singing,
a lot of like some comedic moments, but then people are still dying during these times. And then the American invasion happens, and then it's a fucking shit show. But it basically ends with their company commander's like, we're gonna do a fucking suicide charge. And it's a dumb idea, so a lot of the soldiers are like, we don't want to do this. They end up retreating, but then like the battalion on the other side of the island get the news, and they're like, we already published the news that like this battalion sacrificed their lives nobly. And then now they came back and they're alive. They have to go sacrifice their lives, and they're forced to do a fucking suicide charge at the end, and everyone dies. Which is, and a lot like Shigeru Mizuki in the interview at the end says 90% of what happened is true.
Yeah, the real maddening part of it is that one of the I forget the rank. I fully admit I wasn't fucking keeping track of all these characters in the ranks, but one of the higher ranks was like, I gotta go and report this to the people. So like, wait, so you're just leaving us during this
the
charge?
chief of staff, yeah.
Yeah, and then he happens to get gut shot in the middle of that exchange, so he dies anyways. But Shigeru Mizuki like, that didn't happen in real life. That guy just got away. He ran
That guy
away.
told us to go kill ourselves, and then the fucking pieced out.
Yeah, in real life, he was even more cowardly, because in the story he didn't get to enact his cowardliness. He just caught one. It happens, I guess, sometimes. But he didn't catch one. He just went home.
Mizuki taking his revenge in manga.
He should have just like actually just tracked the guy down and just shot him for real. Like there was a guy who was running around China doing not China, Japan doing stuff like that. Well, he was more trying to uncover stuff, but I think he went to go shoot some commander and just shot his son instead because the commander wasn't at home one day.
Like for revenge for the war stuff.
Yes, I think that commander might have ordered 3 soldiers to be killed so they could be eaten.
Damn.
Jesus.
There's a documentary. It's called "The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On," and it follows this guy. He was a soldier. He was a Japanese soldier in World War II, and he came out of it basically. I think here's some quote like he basically considers. There's like some. He's like almost like nearly like a religious take on the whole thing. It's basically like, we deserve this because basically like we went along with it. And he basically goes around. He hates Hirohito. He like tried to like shoot him with a paintball or something. Goes around like with he could drive around in the car saying like Hirohito's a war criminal or Hirohito should die or shame on Hirohito. And then he starts tracking down other old soldiers. Like he's in his 60s, I think, and all these people are old as well. And he kind of goes to their houses and harangues them and like wrestles them, but they're like old people, so it's not like. It's just like grabbing a headlock and holding it for like 2 hours so the other person just gives up and actually will like talk about. That was one of the stories. I think it was like some woman came to him to be like, hey, you need to look into this. And other things were like things he looked into of like, oh, like what happened? Like all the people died and trying to find out the truth. I think
Jesus.
I think he might have actually been on one of these islands. Or maybe I'm mixing up with Fires in the Plains. I can't remember which one it was. They talked about like hunting white meat or dark meat. Basically hunting like American or Australian soldiers or hunting down the Papua New Guineans for food. That's a very good documentary too from Rick's argument. Man is just like he's like in an American context. Imagine like John Brown, just with not as much killing.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great documentary.
Sometimes you don't even need the fiction to get like the fucking crazy dark shit.
No, you don't. Just read this manga. I'm very surprised that this got published in Japan. But maybe the 70s was late enough where like people could reflect on like World War II stuff and be like, yo, actually, this was fucked. And this is a horrible thing.
Maybe do you need to distinguish between getting published and like how much it was read? Because at the time, like I'm assuming he was already like established as like, oh, Shigeru Mizuki, like he's got the name.
Kitaro,
like,
yeah.
So like maybe if it was some randomer, they'd be like, we're not doing this. But like he could be like, hey, I'm like, if he's got his own like studio, like he's making a lot of money. He can probably demand stuff that like other people couldn't demand. But how well it's sold, I have no idea. Like that's the other bit.
Yeah, at the end there's a little interview with him and they ask what the reception was in Japan and he was like, nobody read it. So I feel like it kind of snuck under the radar there for a while.
I wonder if he's one of those creators that if he wasn't doing Kitaro, people weren't looking at him too much. As far as just like, mainstream.
Well, because he does like Kitaro or he does like war is shit hell kind of books. They're like opposite ends of the spectrum.
Do we know how well Showa was received outside of Japan, like in Japan?
I don't know.
Yeah, this is the problem. We would need to read Showa. And I haven't read that yet.
I wonder. I actually had all 4 volumes, but they're gone now. I sold them anyway before I moved here. Because like this does come up. Like he does talk about his experiences in World War II and Showa. Like there, I don't know how he ends up like some Papua New Guineans. I think maybe they're not Papua New Guineans. I don't know what some people like living on the island like basically end up finding him, or he ends up finding them at some stage, and they basically like take care of him. And I can't remember what happens to him then. Does he like? Is it after the war's over he goes back or what? But I think he does like talk about like he ends up going back later and like visiting those people and like thanking them because they basically like saved his life.
Yeah, I think they were native Papua New Guineans. I think it mentions it briefly. Maybe in Frederick Schote's intro. I think he talked a little bit about it. And then in the interview too, he did mention that he went back after, I think he like met up with one of his commanders or something, and then went back and he took some photos too that helped like with the actual making of the manga, like for reference.
Okay. Let's see. Who I had read this before. Wait, Seamus, did you read this before as well?
This is my third time reading it.
Okay. Then we'll start with Darfox. This was your first time reading this?
Yep.
What did you think of Onward Towards Our Noble Deaths?
It was definitely interesting. Also, weirdly goofy at times, and I've read Shigeru Mizuki stuff, so I understand um, that there's like a lighthearted edge to most of his stuff. But it's so weird to me. It's so weird to me to have like these drawings of these soldiers exploding and their head flying off to one side of the panel. Like, bro, you were there, bro. That was your mate. Like, you gonna fucking do him like that? Like the whole creative process of drawing this, I don't know how he can do this. And at the back matter that we keep mentioning, he says that like he he gets propelled by like the rage he feels build up from like telling stories about the war. Doesn't fucking seem like it sometimes. It seems like fucking clown shoes. So like I don't like it. It's very interesting. I just don't expect it. I kind of like that he does it. I'm not gonna be offended on anybody else's behalf. It's not really offensive to me. It's just weird. Like I think about like I don't know. Maybe it's just like my own. I live in Florida, folks. So like pray for me. But like America has such a brain dead fascination with veterans where we truly do not give a fuck about their well-being, but we will speak as if they are gods, and if you ever say anything to disrespect them, you're a fucking pariah. At least to some communities, obviously. Not everybody cares. Um, and just the idea of like, let me write this story that's ostensibly like a serious story, honoring people and telling like a really serious thing that happened at one time. Um, but let me draw cartoonish drawings of them exploding and their legs flying everywhere. Um, it's very incongruous to me. So like that never got normal to me while reading the book. I was like, this looks like Wile E. Coyote held onto the dynamite too long. You know what I'm saying? Um,
That's fascinating to me because I love war is bad narratives. I've always kind of loved that shit. And a lot of the ones I have read have been comedy. Or had comedic. So like anything by Kurt Vonnegut, who also served in I think he served in Vietnam. He was
World War Two.
World War II? Okay.
I think was it him? He was in Dresden, wasn't he?
Yes. No, you're right. You're right. He is very, very, very anti-war in his books, and they're all hilarious because it's satire. And I think about I've not read the novel MASH, and I don't like the movie, but the TV show MASH, same idea. The whole thing is like war is bad. This is terrible. Also, we're gonna make jokes like for most of the time, and MASH is like one of my favorite TV shows of all time. So like to me, the idea is like comedy and darkness, I think, have a kind of a I don't know, they're kind of bedfellows. I mean, you're right. It is cartoonish and crazy, but also like when I was reading those pages or those panels, I was like, this is real. Like this really happened, and he really saw this. And I think in some ways, like putting this on paper is kind of, I don't want to say therapeutic, but he's grappling with a lot of, I mean, post-traumatic stress. Like, I mean, what he experienced was like beyond the pale. I mean, some of the things he described, like at the end of the book when Maruyama is like the last man standing and he like wakes up because he feels the eggs of the insects that laid eggs in his face, like the hole in his face. I'm like, this is foul. This is like truly disturbing. And it's also, but yeah, it's also these like goofy cartoons because it's Shigeru Mizuki. I think it's supposed to make it feel bad. I think you're supposed to feel weird about it. And I think that's very I think it's very intentional, you know?
Oh yeah. I'm reminded a lot of a manga I talked about in the past called Peridu, Guaranica of Paradise. Fox, you remember this? It was about like Japanese soldiers on Peridu Island, the Battle of Peridu, one of the most like bloody, fucked up Japanese battles.
Maybe this doesn't nothing to do with the torpedo people, right?
No,
I remember the
it is
torpedo
not.
pretty vividly, but I don't. Maybe I don't remember. You've read quite a few of these manga.
I have, but Peridu is like there. It's not really have a lot of comedy, Morgana, but the art style is super cartoonish, which is very like Shigeru Mizuki's Onward Towards a Noble Death.
Well, and it's also like luring you in, like, oh, cartoons, and then you read it and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, war is hell. War is hell.
It's that spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go down, right?
It's a very good manga. I wish it got published in English, but I don't see that happening. Even though it's a more recent manga, it's I can't see it doing well in the West, which is a shame.
I'd buy it. Pelelu's like, you don't really hear about it much, but like it's definitely one of the most like it was definitely like the first time where it was like the first island battle where it really was like the only way we're taking this island is like we kill every Japanese person on here. It's like they are not giving up.
Yep, it was super bloody, and it's a good manga. It's a good war manga, and like many good war manga, it is war is hell and war is bad.
And you know what's fascinating? You know, you're saying that you didn't think it would do well in the West, and I think that like at one time, American readers at least were much more responsive to media that's critical of war. I do really feel like, and maybe this is like a post 9/11 thing. I do really feel like there is an unhealthy. I mean, this is kind of the basis of our country, but there's a very unhealthy preoccupation with having a standing military and needing to protect our country and our way of life and all these ideas that I find absolutely foul in a civilized society, or what should be a civilized society.
You say it's history of America. It's really the history of America post World War II.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, now this is exactly what Garth brings up in Punisher Born.
I
all comes back.
I knew.
He literally says they slayed the great pieces of Woken and they defeated whatever Nazi Germany. The beast did not go to sleep. Like America never demilitarized. Like after World War I, a lot of people came into the army. Like then there was like 30,000 people. The Navy now was big, the biggest Navy in the world at that stage. But like after World War II, it was like, no, we're never not at war now, or we're never not geared up for war.
Yeah. And but in terms of like the way society like thinks about war, like during Vietnam we were a lot more as a society outspoken against war. And I think we've kind of turned back in the other direction in a lot of ways, and
But I think that's because in Vietnam you had conscription, and
yeah,
the U.S. government learned their lesson after that, which is like just stick to volunteers. No one's going to care.
Yeah, well, and here's I've heard people from other countries say like, oh, you join the army, you're terrible, like, and whatever. And I've also seen the response of this being like, in the United States, is it really people who sign up and volunteer? I think there are a lot of people who are really coerced into service. It is very insidious. I mean, we have ROTC people come and table at high schools to recruit high schoolers. Like, and
they're not going to the rich neighborhoods too.
No, and I do not want to. I am like, and I'm just putting all this out there. I am 110% against like all war, all armies. This I realize this is not practical or it's very ideal, but this is like my personal like thing is I hate violence. I think it's abhorrent that we respond this way to international disputes. I do not blame the individuals who are signing up because they also do not have the economic means to do elsewise, or they have been sold a dream. They've been sold an idea. My brother-in-law is military police, which is a whole like situation. I love my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, and it's like I just like I sometimes I look at him and I know that there are things about it, the life that he has chosen that he hates. There are things about being part of the army that are terrible, and I just wish that he had something better. You know what I mean? Every time I interact with somebody who has had this experience, I just wish that they didn't have to have it or feel that they had to have it. You know what I mean? It's really insidious part of this culture, and I think it's not just American culture, but I think we're particularly nasty in our kind of veneration of war and quote unquote peacekeeping or whatever the hell it is we think we do.
Well, we can turn to Onward Towards Our Noble Deaths, at least as an example. That I think it's clear, Morgana, that war sucks.
Fucking
And
sucks.
War is bad.
Yes, but Doctor it's necessary. Right? You have to kill those people.
Don't.
Oh no,
Dude.
it's necessary to sacrifice yourself.
No, it's necessary to kill those people. It's called shooting and crying.
Oh boy.
It's such an inexcusable waste of precious human life. And there were characters even in this book that said that like this is a waste. This is a bad idea. This is strategically a bad idea. It is also inherently a waste of life. It is a waste of men who deserve better.
It was a doctor in the battalion, and he even shot himself in protest.
I know. Well, there was him, but there's also one of the other officers earlier when the commander was like, we're gonna do a death charge. He's like, wouldn't it make more sense if we retreated part way and then took part in guerrilla tactics and we could like hold them off for like a couple months? Like he had like actual strategy that would work, and the other guy's like, no, I want us to all die in glory. And it's like, Jesus Christ.
There is actually one other part. They don't mention this in the manga at all because I guess Shuki didn't probably really think of it. Rabul actually didn't matter.
Yeah.
The US and the Allies were like, yeah, we don't need to take like the Japanese whole idea was, oh, we're going to make this fortress and it's going to be like the anchor of our Papua New Guinea land area. And the US, they're like, no, we don't need it. We're just going to skip by it. We're just going to leave them here. They basically left it alone. Well, they bombed it and they bombed it and destroyed all the ships because they were like, well, we don't want them like bombing us. But they kind of just were like, eventually we'll take it, but we're not going to rush because they were like, yeah, we'll just leave them here. There's like 100,000 of them. Fuck it, they're just going to starve to death. Like, no need risking our lives. Yeah, we'll just bypass it.
Such an unconscionable waste.
I mean, the first third of the book, where they're just like digging trenches and like cutting down trees for no reason, it seems like such a fucking hilarious waste. Where people are still somehow dying for the dumbest reasons.
I feel like every like War is Hell book I've read has that like somebody dies and it's like so almost like an embarrassing death, like the guy who got the fish stuck in his throat and the scales were going the wrong way, so he like died. There's always something like that happens in these, just kind of to highlight the like absurdity of the whole situation too.
The worst one was they're in the rain and one guy gets hit by a sniper and they don't drag him to safety. Instead, they run to him. He's still alive, and they're like, to prove that he died in battle, just fucking chop off his finger with this shovel. And they leave, and he's just dying. And it's like, you guys leaving me? And that's it. What the fuck? Fucking war is horrible.
Well, I think we do need to color this in the context of, we're talking about like Japan in World War II, where like these people are not citizens with like rights. They're subjects of the emperor.
Oh
Like all the slapping stuff reminded me. I think it was Patton in like south of France. He got like dismissed because he basically like slapped a soldier who was like in an infirmary because they were like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like you can't." That's because the U.S. Army was citizens, so it's like they still have rights. They're still like, there's still like things where it's like uh, you're not expected to like die for the country. Like the whole thing was like, no, like we want as few of our soldiers dying as possible. Japan had a very different approach where it's like, oh no, it's good that you die. The more that die, the better.
what the fuck?
Partly driven by the fact that the US had like the industrial base to be like, yeah, fuck it, like we can just churn out tanks for days or like artillery. And Japan were like, well, we don't have that, so we have fighting spirit. Which turns out actually doesn't really work against like mass artillery. This book kind of showed like where it's like, oh, we got one cannon, well, they have like an entire barrage.
Yep.
But they've got shonen determination.
God.
That's where this is where shonen determination gets you in real life.
Yeah.
Yep. I will say the scenes of like the tanks coming in to like invade and everything and all like the bombs dropping.
Doc, I have a question. How do you think these tanks looked versus the tanks
They
in
look
Godzilla?
great. They look fucking good compared to that stupid fucking Godzilla comic we read a couple weeks back. God, they fucking
Damn.
they run circles around like they are everything, like all the ships, all like the tanks. There's so much background stuff that Mizuki draws very realistically. It's fucking gorgeous.
Did he draw all this? I think there's always this like question with him and the likes of this guy. I think Mizuki in particular. Actually, now that I think of it, because I think there's a lot of stuff where it's like a lot of like his backgrounds were done by or implied to be done by assistants.
Right.
Maybe not in this one, but
Shigeru Mizuki has definitely like come up in the age where he was doing all the work by himself. It would not surprise me by this time if he had some assistance, but I would say in general, he was probably doing a lot of those drawings by himself.
And he is a classically trained artist. And
yes, and it shows.
Yes, and I have an art book of his, a yokai book, which I'm fairly certain the illustrations are things he did entirely himself, and he is absolutely capable of this level of work. Even if some of it is help with assistance, it is not outside the realm of his skills, for sure.
Hey, Shigeru Mizuki died old. I'll say that.
Yes, yeah, I think he was like 92 or something. Yeah, he lived a good long life.
And if in his later years or in his later half of his career, letting other people draw all this shit contributed any to that, I think that's a-okay.
He lived a good long life, and he drew all that manga with one arm, dude. And it was his non-dominant. He learned how to. I mean, by the time he died, it would have been very dominant. But yeah, he worked with his non-dominant hand post-war.
You guys all know that famous little comic that he made where he goes to like a award show and sees Osamu Tezuka and Shotaro Ishinomori. They're talking about, oh, I stayed up 2 nights. I've been up for 3 nights. And Mizuki's just like, every night I get 8 hours of sleep.
Guess who died really old? I think he died in like 2017.
2015. He was 93 years old.
Beautiful long life. And what a fuck you to the emperor. You were supposed to die in a suicide charge. Nope, I'm going to live until I'm almost 100 because fuck you and your war machine.
A couple years back, I read a World War II manga about a suicide bomber who returned from 7 suicide missions. He never suicide bombed.
It's not very good at his job, huh?
He looked at it this way. It's more effective for me to take out a ship and come back alive so I can come back and keep doing that. And even in the face of all the fucking higher-ups who wanted him to go kill himself. They even published an article, this man dies heroically, and he refused to do it. And he lived to tell the tale. It really is infuriating reading in the last half of this book about all like the top brass talking about, oh, it's a shame we lost those people, but now we can publish this in the news. And when they all show up again and they're like, you guys have to go and die. We commanded you to die. We already published that article. And they even like guilt trip the two like leaders into suicide over like having like escaped. It's madness, man.
It's so funny. There's this thing. I don't know if it's an Italian thing or an Italian American thing. We call it la figure. Like you're trying to put on a good figure or a good face. Like it's keeping up with the Joneses, right? It very much feels like that's what these commanders are doing. They're just trying to look good. They're trying, our men are the most loyal to the emperor and the most loyal to Japan. Like they commit suicide and die on behalf of our, of the empire. And it's like it's so meaningless, but they can publish it. They can publish these articles, and they can, their wives and children can be proud knowing that, it's like, so
it wasn't a meaningless death, and like it's totally fucking meaningless in this book.
Totally meaningless. Meaningless.
The title, fucking Onward Towards Our Noble Death. What a fucking joke. Such a shame nobody read this when it came out in Japan. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think you can tell when you read this that Mizuki's angry. Just,
It was funny because, like, at the interview at the end, he seems kind of like they're trying to get more out of him, and he's just like, whatever.
Well, and this came out in 2011 in English, and he had published it in 73.
So 40 years ago, so he's so far removed from it. He's like, I'm at peace with all that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. Do you know his favorite thing to get? Well, in his last years of living, it was a McDonald's cheeseburger.
That's so funny. I also know he was really into Daifukumochi.
Enjoying the simple pleasures of being alive. What a man.
God bless him. Yeah.
Hey, he knew what's up. Secret S rank fast food.
McDonald's item. I know we had our long rant about fucking war and World War II, and I knew Seamus was going to bring up the Punisher. I fucking knew it.
I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't think a week's gone by since I've reread that book, or I don't at least like think of it at least once. I'm like, I'm just going to start like going around, like, I don't know, I'll go into the office one day and I'll be working away and I'm just like saying random lines to myself. It's like, yeah, they'll blame it all on Vietnam and they'll be right and they'll be wrong. People are like, what's this guy doing? It's my Roman Empire.
Some good shit. I guess, I guess, Morgana, we just kind of got into like what everyone thought of this book.
I just ranted about war because it makes me angry, and I've been thinking about war a lot because of the state of the world, and because I fucking watched Nausicaa, and then I fucking read this book. Yesterday I was like, oh, there's so much war in my life right now. I love the book, by the way. I'm not surprised. Yeah. I'm not surprised that I do. But up until this point, I've read Kitaro and I've read Nononba, and I had not read any of his serious historical stuff. Serious in air quotes. It's a very familiar flavor. I read a lot. I was really, especially in high school, was really into like Vonnegut and like very much into the kind of and MASH actually. I'm very into like the war is hell narrative, and I still appreciate. I don't read it as much anymore because fucking depressing. But this is catnip for me. Very much so. It's one of my favorite kinds of stories, because again, I have a lot of, respect isn't even the word, like compassion for these people who, and I even think this of people who volunteer and sign up for the army. I really don't think they understand the seriousness of what they might have to do or what might happen around them or what might happen to them. Like, I really think a lot of idealism around, going to war and being a hero, and it's I mean, people blow up in your face. Like, insects lay, eggs in the bullet hole in your cheek, apparently.
It's also just like the the simplicity appeals to some people because it's like three hearts and a cot, and
Right.
you're told what to do. So it's like if you're out of high school and you don't really have any kind of trade to learn, or if you know how any school lined up, it could be really appealing compared to like working at McDonald's or whatever, and then you're fucking getting shot at or shooting people.
I really think sometimes that people don't understand, or not that they don't understand, but they don't think about, like, no, you could die, and, like, not just you could die, but, like, what that means, like, no, really dying, like, what do you like, I mean, Dakazu, you have the death anxiety. I feel like you know what I mean. Like, they don't think about it. They don't think about how terrible it is. Or if they don't die, what other terrible things could happen to them. And, sometimes not dying is worse. You come back with all kinds of really, like, awful, um, you know,
Trauma,
trauma,
PTSD.
limbs missing. I read a really great so Mary Roach is this wonderful, she was a journalist, she's written a bunch of nonfiction books about, she picks a topic and she goes all in on it. I read a bunch of them, but she has one called Grunt, and it's all about the army. And apparently the army is kind of at the forefront, the American army is kind of at the forefront of penis reconstruction surgery, because of how many soldiers step on IEDs and lose their junk. So there's a whole chapter on penis reconstruction. So if you join the army, your dick could get blown off. And I don't think you're thinking about that enough, guys.
What's actually reconstructed? Is it fully functioning? Is it data?
Yes. So it's really interesting. I know this is like, they have to use very specific tissue because, I mean, erectile tissue is very different from other tissue in the body. So they frequently will take tissue from the inside of the patient's cheek because that has the it has the sensitivity of erectile tissue, but also the resistance to getting wet. You don't want like skin on the rest of your body. If you like use that to pee constantly, you just get dry skin. It would be very painful. So yeah, they reconstruct it. Sometimes I feel like they've used like maybe like fingers or other donor parts in order to reconstruct. I can't remember it's been a while since I read it, but it was really, really interesting. I know it sounds like very I don't know, like, I think some people think it's unimportant, but, like, they even talk about, like, functionality of, like, how important it is for these soldiers to be able to, like, have a normal sex life, after this, how to either become, you know, fully rehabilitated. It was a really, really interesting. I was very fascinated despite myself.
Yeah.
Also tissue from, like, the inner part of your upper arm is, like, very soft and, same deal. They sometimes use that. Yeah, like grafting skin and, there are methods of, like, using inflatable, like, pumps and things. Yeah, there's a whole
Wow.
yeah, it's a really fascinating. So anyway,
you're literally a cyborg.
yeah. Yeah, you've got a cyber dick.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So the technology is there, and it's because soldiers needed it because their dicks got blown off in the Middle East. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. I like that. I like the government really thought about this like a lot. You know,
Well, I mean, morale is low when your junk doesn't work.
yeah.
How did I know we were gonna talk about fucking something like dick reconstruction?
Aside from that, it's a very, very good book, and it talks about a lot of other things as well. But that was something that, that like when I learned that, I was like, why would you ever willingly sign up for this?
Well, at least in this book's case, they were conscripted, so they were drafted. They didn't have a choice.
Right.
As Seamus said, they were the possession of the emperor during that time.
There's also a chapter about what happens if you have the runs while you're like in active duty, and how they like try to make rations so that they are not inclined to make soldiers sick and things like that, or give them intestinal troubles. Whole chapters on like the food. It's a good book.
There's a YouTube channel I look at where a guy looks at like military rations from around the world. I forget his name, but it's very fascinating.
Better ones from Singapore good.
The Asian country ones are the best. That's what he says. But yeah, it's really interesting. Jameis, I know you talked about Punisher because you would and you must. But how was it your third time reading through this? You notice anything new or different or something stand out to you?
Not really. I don't know. Like I read this and I like it, and then I read it again thinking, well, I like it more, and I'm like, nah, it's good, but it's not like blowing me away.
Is it because you've also read Showa and you prefer that, or
Not necessarily. Like show is very different because like show like it's just like one. I can't remember his entire book. It's so long since I read Showa now. I think it's more. I was trying to like think it through. There's nothing here where I'm like, oh, this is like done like really, really well, really, really interestingly. It's more like, yeah, it's fairly good. I think maybe I mean actually, I think some of the stuff right towards the end when it kind of like where it builds to in the end is pretty good, but the rest of it along the way, it's like it's like Showa, and it's like it's a very good like representation to give you an idea what it's like, but it's not necessarily like all that interesting or compelling. Like I'm trying to like to me like a better example would be like there was like a book called Fire in the Plains. Actually, it's a guy who I don't know. I think he also was in the Japanese army during World War II on Papua New Guinea. That's more. It's just like following this one character. He's like stumbles around trying to not get killed and like retreat, which is like turned into a book. And like that, like to me, is kind of like more interestingly done compared to this. This is like what did they say in video game terms? A 7 out of 10. It's good and I like it. Like I'm not like, oh yeah, I'll definitely like reread this again. Maybe at some stage I probably will, but maybe I won't. Like,
I'm trying to think because this is my second time reading this, and my first time reading it in English. Oh, that's what I remember when I read this in Japanese. Like, it had very simple like Japanese. Like, it wasn't even like barely any kanji in there. So it made me almost feel like, is this for kids? Because of like
not in
what
a
was like,
Gekiga mag.
yeah, I hope not, but maybe just like for like ease of reading, and maybe people couldn't, you didn't think people had that good reading skills back then or something, so it was just written at the most base form of like Japanese in hiragana a lot. But it's this English edition, the art is immaculate. Like, however, like the digital edition too, like it looks so good. There's very little Moira. It looks like very well processed into digital form. Trying to think of anything else specific, but maybe we covered everything. Dar, did I miss anything?
Jocelyn's translation is perfect.
Oh, yes.
She does a great job. I have no notes, just good stuff. And Drawn and Quarterly, I mean, they do a good job with their books in general.
Yeah.
But
besides the digital inconsistency that I mentioned about the pages being presented in reverse and being backwards,
which could also be an Amazon issue.
Yes. Yeah. Comixology possibly fucking it up.
We do have to tell them when we send the files what direction they go in. So if you miss that, or if they just assume it goes the other way, they will put it the other way. So
and it could end up like this.
Yeah, so it could, and it could also be. I mean, Drawn and Quarterly doesn't do a whole lot of digital, so it could also be lack of a process.
Their understanding.
Yeah, not even understand, but just like process to get these things, But no, they do a good job with their books. Layout is beautiful. The physical copy of the book is paperback, the one I have with French flaps. So it's a nice. It's not a huge, like, super fancy or anything, but it matches the same kind of generation of Showa books, and also there was a big Kitaro omnibus that came out shortly after this. Then later they published the Kitaro like single tankobon, but they did like an omnibus edition that has a very similar cover in terms of like color and stuff. So they definitely treat Mizuki well.
I'm glad, because he definitely deserves it as like a mega star of the manga world, but I wish they would just give everyone the same treatment.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah. Darfox, anything else to say about Onward Towards Our Noble Death? I see Lightning Bolt snuck into chat. I was making some yokes.
Were they yokes or were they truths?
He did say, yo, that tank looks hella dope. He's true. He's right about that. It is hella dope. Sorry, Dar. Your final thoughts.
Why am I stuck working this shitty job?
Love that. That, like,
the prostitute's lament.
That, like, refrain throughout the book is really good, I think. And like so I know that like the army hired sex workers so that these men could go off and kill themselves after having finally been with a woman or whatever, which is ridiculous. But I love the idea that, sex work is terrible, but being in the army is worse. And really highlights the thing I've seen people bandying around this, like, oh, selling yourself is terrible and immoral. And it's like, you don't think you sell yourself when you work any other job? Like, you don't sell your time or sell your, like, work retail, man. It fucking sucks. Sex work, you can choose it. Not everybody, but it, it's a job. They're all jobs. But
They're all jobs.
I really liked the hat trick there, because they brought it up 3 times, I think, right? Good stuff.
I do also I like, this might be my favorite version of his art, because you still have the faces that have that Shigeru Mizuki kind of cartoony edge, but the proportions are more realistic. Heads are probably too big on some bodies, but like it looks great. A lot of times when he draws, people have like really squat, they're almost like chibi proportions. That's how a lot of people in Showa are. But this is almost like a blend of both, best of both worlds kind of thing.
And he has some kind of more realistic outlines and things too. Just out here proving his art chops in this book, I feel like. A lot of his other work is very cartoony, is very his style, and this is that. But then there's also a good deal of like, just by the way, I did go to art school. Here are some perfectly rendered silhouettes of American soldiers.
Here are perfectly rendered bombs that are being dropped on the island. Look at this explosion. That looks very good. Look at this B-52 bomber that is flying over.
The stippling, the pointillism in some of those like explosions is so... The texture of some of those. I mean, it feels complicated to say that it's beautiful because these are violent images, but the texture is incredible.
It's a good book. I guess the question is, do you recommend this? I mean, I think we all recommend it, but do we recommend this over other Shigeru Mizuki books that are available?
I think it very much depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah. It's less so like read this over anything, and more like, what do you know?
This falls under the historical group with Showa and
Yeah.
Shigeru Mizuki's
Like
Hitler.
I think I'll if I'm recommending Shigeru Mizuki, I'll probably recommend some sort of Kitaro first. But hopefully in a conversation that I have recommending something, I'd say, I mean, if you're really not interested in that, he's also pretty famous for doing historical stuff like this.
Okay, sorry, I got a correction from Lightning Bolt that it was a B-17 bomber during World War II. Sorry.
They didn't know how to count high enough to 52 back then. It took a few years.
Morgana, you would say also to check out Kitaro first?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it depends on what you're looking for, but I Kitaro is what he's best known for and is probably the most palatable isn't the word, but like most likely to be a hit with more people. I think this is heavy. I mean, anything that has like, people dying in suicide missions and things, I think you really have to know who you're recommending it to.
I mean, I would at least say that if you're going to look at the historical Shigeru Mizuki stuff, this is probably the best one to start with, because it's a single volume.
Yeah.
It's not like there's also Hitler, but like if you're gonna start on that, that's like you need to be knowing what you're getting into. So, and then Showa's good, but it's long. It's multiple volumes, so you might want to dip your toe into Onward Towards Our Noble Death first.
In the interview, he's like, Hitler intrigues me, and I'm like, somebody could take this out of context very easily.
Mm-hmm. Seamus, what do you say about Onward Towards Our Noble Death? 7 out of 10. Is that your thoughts?
I don't do 10. That's too detailed for my liking. 3 out of 5. No, it's more I like looked back because and it's just consistently 3 out of 5.
Okay. That may sound like a medium score, but a medium score for Seamus is very good. People should know.
Hey, 3 means you liked it.
Mm-hmm. That's right, Morgana.
Dakuzu, my average score on Goodreads is like 3.05.
3 is very respectable.
Mm-hmm. Tell that to all the people that were mad at you, Morgana. What did you give it? 3 out of 5? And then people were like,
Vinland Saga.
No,
it was something else.
The one with the guy with the face, the Hokkaido.
Oh, right, Golden Kamuy.
Yes, Golden Kamuy.
What's wrong, Morgana? Why didn't you like it?
I did like it.
But you gave it a 3.
3 means I liked it.
Yeah,
it didn't change my life.
I thought that's funny because I was like, yeah, I give it 3 out of 5 as well. Like,
didn't Morgana give Vinland Saga 2 though?
No, I gave that 3.
Okay.
I'm fairly certain I gave that 3. I got shit when I didn't give The Wicked and the Divine
Oh,
5 out
that's
of
what it was.
5.
Yeah,
I think I also gave it 3, and somebody I know who really loves The Wicked and the Divine and really thought it was my bag was like, why only 3? And I'm like, it was fine. I mean, it was fine. Like, I've read other things about like mythology that I like better. I don't know what you want from me. Didn't hate it.
Yeah. What do you want, man?
Was that person big into like 90s British music, the likes of Oasis and Blur and all that kind of stuff?
She likes a lot. I mean, no, she has pretty good taste in general. I don't think
Pretty good taste. Oof.
she does. No, I mean, this is getting very. This has also been a while. And it's been a while since I spoke with her. No, she's great, and I don't have a problem with her. Or I was just really fascinated by the fact that like and she's not the only one. So many people are like, Morgana, Wicked and the Divine is so your thing. You're gonna love it. You've got to read it. And I read it and I was like, okay. I mean, I think maybe you don't know what my thing is. And this is a problem I come across not infrequently in many aspects of my life. So it's people I am not shy about saying what I like, but I think people think then that all the things that kind of mesh with that are then automatically things I would like, and that's not. I do still have some amount of discernment that happens in the consumption of my media.
They don't know Morgana. We know Morgana.
You guys know me.
We do. Okay. I'm sorry, you're going to say something?
No, I was going to say, sometimes you think that I will hate something that I don't hate.
Sometimes.
I try not to predict what people are going to say because I feel like that puts people in buckets inside my head. And I think that everybody I know and respect is like, more like an amorphous blob in my head. You never know what they're going to be.
There's a lesson there to be learned on Nakazu.
I'll never learn that lesson. You're all buckets in my head.
It's a very,
and I'm right.
very enlightened viewpoint, Dark Fox.
Yeah. All my friends are amorphous blobs.
If only.
Well, this blob is ready to end this episode then. Yeah, that was our episode on Onward Towards Our Noble Deaths by Shigeru Mizuki. Hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank Darfox, Morgana, and Seamus for hosting this episode with me. Shout out to people who were in our live stream chat, like Chris from Canada, Tyler, and Lightning Bolt. Don't forget to subscribe to that YouTube channel, youtube.com/MangaMacTV. If you enjoyed Manga Machinations, make sure you subscribe to us, review us, rate us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you can find us. Make sure to check out our website, mangamachinations.com. Our Tumblr is mangamachinations.tumblr.com. Buy us a coffee to support us. Go to ko-fi.com/mangamac. Reminder that next week that we are going to be doing Manhwa Machinations. No, wait. Manben. I'm tired. Manben Machinations. We're going to watch the Naoki Urasa Manben episode on Wataru Watanabe, and we will also be looking at the first collection of Yomish Petal. Stay tuned for that. Join our Discord server. Come talk to us. Come play Mahjong with us. Discord.me/mangamac. Send us emails, mangamachinations@gmail.com. You can follow our social media by going to @MangaMacPodcast. That's Manga MAC Podcast. And that's for Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, all that social media stuff. You can follow my social media @DocZoo, follow Darfox @Darfox8, follow Morgana @MorganaRelina, and follow Seamus @Seamus2389. Seamus is spelled without an H. Alright everyone, thank you so much for listening to us this week. Bye bye.